All right, everybody. Sooners Illustrated game preview time. Week 6, fresh off the bye week. Number 5, Oklahoma. Kent State, Saturday afternoon at the stadium. Final non-conference game of the regular season. It's a 3 p.m. kickoff on the SEC Network on Saturday. Guys, obviously Oklahoma is ginormous favorites here. Everyone's kind of looking ahead to Texas and the gauntlet in the SEC that looms ahead. But this game is useful. It's Michael Hawkins' first start since the bowl game, first start of the season with John Mateer on the shelf. You also got some guys coming back from injury, like Javonte Gibson, Eli Bowen. We kind of touched that a little bit on the podcast on Monday. For you guys, I mean, again, it's Oklahoma is huge favorites over a 6-touchdown favorite. It's not a game that there's really any way Oklahoma's going to lose, but there is still something to be gained and some useful aspects of this game going into Texas next week. Am I right?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's an opportunity for them to, really see what they learned coming out of the bye week.
Sure.
Talked a lot about, they do some self-scouting, assess some things, figure out what was and wasn't working through that first 4-game stretch. And look, Oklahoma is playing against itself this weekend more than it's playing against Kent State. Like Kent State is, we discussed, arguably the worst team in college football. At least at the FBS level. There's a couple other teams that are, I think, just below them in SP+, but they've lost 25 consecutive games to FBS opponents dating back to the end of the 2022 season. So it's been a minute since they've actually beaten anybody of consequence. So for Oklahoma, it's just like, hey, work on what they need to work on and position yourself to feel good going into Red River next week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as we said, I think it's all about seeing what the guys are coming back from injury, how they're going to look, how's Michael Hawkins going to look in his start. Because as we've seen, Oklahoma's done really well in the recruiting over the last couple of weeks. If you're a quarterback that's the next guy up is going to go out here and ball out, it's going to help even more. So like just seeing what he can do in this game, how he's going to carry that offense. There's a lot of things to watching this. So it's just going to be really fun, I think, to see what Oklahoma does here.
Yeah, they've kind of set it up to be like a fun weekend. They're wearing the throwback uniforms. They're going to honor the 1985 National Championship team. So Barry Switzer, Brian Bosworth, a lot of those types of guys are going to be in the building. They're going to get honored at halftime. So they've kind of it's almost like a spring game plus. Like, it's kind of just be like a fun weekend at the stadium, and they should win by 50. It's kind of one of those types of spots. It just feels weird because it's in the first weekend of October. Normally this is something you kind of rip off the Band-Aid earlier in the year, but the way the SEC schedule is with those 8 conference games, it creates some of these weird games. Also, they played Maine in November last year. Might go away next year with going to 9 conference games. This might not really be as much of a thing in the future, which would be fine with me. So we'll see. I mean, it is an opportunity to get Michael Hawkins some run. That's obviously the biggest intrigue point in this game. John Mateer, as we kind of look at some of the injury side, that's your big one. No availability report because it's not an SEC game, but obviously John Mateer, the thumb surgery last week, he'll miss this game at least. We'll see what happens. It's going to be a conversation point all next week of can he get back possibly for Red River. But if not, this is a huge chance, right, for Michael Hawkins to actually run Ben Arbuckle's offense for the first time in a full game setting. He kind of did it against Temple a little. He only threw like a handful of passes in that game. Like, it wasn't – this would be for real, this time for, again, basically a full game or however long they want to let him go until it gets out of hand or whatever. But that's really the biggest point of intrigue, right? I mean, it's just kind of seeing Michael Hawkins get to play and, trying to instill some confidence that if he is the guy against Texas or beyond, that this offense can still be efficient enough to go with the defense. They can still win games.
Yeah, you nailed it there. This is, going to be Michael Hawkins' most meaningful playing time in, sure, 9.5 months, since that Armed Forces Bowl against Navy, which, look, Oklahoma lost that game, but it wasn't because of Michael Hawkins. He had arguably his best statistical game passing the ball, shade under 250 yards, 2 touchdowns, ran the ball effectively too. Obviously that Auburn game was kind of the highlight of his freshman season, that first start leading him to the win on the road there. But, this is going to be everybody's first opportunity to really see, what Michael Hawkins has developed into over the last 10 months after working with Ben Arbuckle and John Kuzieski and learning from John Mateer in this offense too. Everybody seems to believe and be very confident that it's going to be a different version of Michael Hawkins out there this weekend. Because again, we saw him against Temple, but he wasn't asked to do much. They were up big. It was the second half. They were largely trying to run out the clock.
Yeah.
They would have had a scoring drive, but missed field goal when he was out there. So they didn't get any points when he was on the field. So this is going to be the first time that he's not only got meaningful playing time, but he's going to be playing with the first team offense. Like the first team offensive line is going to be out there. Mm-hmm. You're going to have, Jaron Kanig and Deion Burks and Isaiah Satania and Keontae Lewis, and you're getting Giovanni Gibson back. You're going to have all the right pieces around him to put him in a position to succeed. And as we discussed before, it is a better overall position for him than last season when he was thrown into the fire with, mounting injuries along the offensive line and a decimated wide receiver core and all that. So I'm really intrigued to just see, what Michael Hawkins can go out there and do with a better situation, with the right pieces around him, and with 10 months of, working closely with two guys who have become known for their development of quarterbacks in a short time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and even when you reference that Temple game, he could have had a touchdown pass. He fired one to Elijah Thomas down the field that was just like a pass interference on the defense. So, there's opportunities out there for him, especially going with the first team offense this time as well. So it's going to be fun to see how he handles that. Like I said, he's aggressive. I like how aggressive that he plays. You're going to see more of that, I think, in this game, trying to go down the field and make that explosive play if he's not running for an explosive play. So it's going to be really fun to see what he does out there with the first team offense.
On the other injury front, we mentioned, I read at the top, Giovanni Gibson, Eli Bowen, both be making their debuts expected this weekend. Team pretty, it seems kind of crazy when your starting quarterback is out, but pretty healthy overall. Offensive line is certainly in a good place. Vechi we talked about that on Monday, that everyone's kind of feeling pretty good right now. You would imagine Michael Fasusi probably back out there. He did play a little against Auburn, but clearly wasn't right. Hopefully he looks a lot more like himself. Vechi and Jake Michaela feeling a little more healthy. As well, defensively in pretty good shape. Bowen on the way back, it sounds like. So pretty healthy team, all things considered, coming out of the bye week, going into the gauntlet coming up in SEC play, starting with Texas next weekend. So let's dive into this game a little bit further. Let's go keys to the game first. James, you're starting. Obviously here, the key, it kind of melds when it's a game like this. It's less so a key to win because Oklahoma should, in no way should this game even be competitive. But what is something Oklahoma needs to accomplish, I guess, for you? What's a key for Oklahoma on Saturday just to do to feel good, maybe kind of moving forward?
I think to feel good, they need to establish a run in this game.
Yeah,
this is the opponent to do it against. The defensive tackles aren't as big as you're going to see in the SEC, so you want to see some push from your offensive linemen. And Fabechi talked about that as well. That was one of the key focuses for them, was getting better in the run game and their run blocking scheme, because they've pass blocked phenomenally throughout the first half of the season, the first part of this season. So just want to see if they can do that. Maybe Jaden Ott gets back out there and we'll see a little bit what he can do. But if not, Xavier Robinson, want to see what he's got again. He came on late in the second half of the last season. Want to see if he can continue that momentum from what he's done just this past year. So just want to have guys like that and just do well with this type of scheme against this opponent. You want to have a good run blocking situation, a good run game overall. That's what I think.
Yeah, run the football. Agree totally. That would be my top key too. Is just you got to run the football in this game and get some of the. Just find something that works, whether it's getting a couple guys going or just a scheme that you like. Something you need to have some run success on Saturday, and in this game, that absolute must for me. Another key that I would go, since James hit that one. The only team in college football doesn't have a turnover. Let's maybe get a couple turnovers this weekend just to get off the goose egg. Honestly, they don't need it to win. Again, there's almost nothing that Oklahoma needs to do to win this game. They should be able to just line up and just go win, obviously. But literally the only team in the sport without one. It's kind of unbelievable considering how good they've been defensively, top 5 in so many categories. They don't have a single turnover this year. Brent Venables talked with that a little bit in the press conference on Tuesday. Just go get a couple. Just get off the goose egg a little bit would be, I think, an objective for me defensively, because they should be able to just completely overwhelm Kent State defensively in this game. But get in the backfield, create some negative plays, and create some turnovers. Just if anything, just to get maybe it opens the floodgates a bit if you can just get one at least. Get a turnover or two would be something that I think should probably be a goal for this one on Saturday.
The stove is hot, as Brent Venables says.
I think it was Jim Nagy on Twitter the other day. It was like, Yeah, when the turnovers come, they come in bunches. So it's like eventually the dam is going to break and they're going to get through because like they've had their opportunities. Like I'm still not sure anybody would have caught Peyton Bowen at this point if he had hauled in that, what would have been an easy pick 6 against Auburn. But yeah, I mean, you guys covered the two big ones as far as this game goes. But I'm going to take the other obvious one is like get Michael Hawkins in a good rhythm. You know, we just talked about it at length, but there's going to be his first meaningful playing time since, late December. His first, real playing time with the starting offense since then. And, it's upgrades all around him in those 10 months since. So, get him in a good rhythm, get him in a comfortable spot in a good headspace, especially if, you might be needing him to start that Texas game again. He started that game last year, was uneven. Offense obviously struggled a lot. They had South Carolina after that, and we know how that went for him. His last SEC start. So, get him in a good rhythm, get him comfortable. And I'm confident that, Ben Arbuckle and John Kuzieski, and again, with the help of John Mateer too in his ear, like they're going to have him prepared and ready to go out there and execute this offense. Like I don't expect it to, be completely vanilla, but they're not going to show everything they have. But like you want to do enough to have Michael Hawkins in a good spot in case you need him to start, a meaningful game again next week or the week after.
This is a game where like the wide receivers, your playmakers should be able to win their one-on-one matchups. Get those guys on the islands like that, and Michael Hawkins just fine. If you want to keep it vanilla, that's what you want to do. Just beat them. Just beat your matchup, so you don't have to show too much of the scheme. So I think that could be a big factor in this as well.
No, I agree totally. That's definitely a top key as well. It just, feeling like he's confident in, like Tom said, in rhythm. That would be huge because he very well might need to be the guy next week. We're going to have a whole week to talk about that. It's going to be the top thing all next week of like, is Mateer going to play? But if not, I mean, you got to have to lean on this guy. So that's a big one, no doubt, this weekend. Players to watch. Some pretty obvious ones here, actually. We've covered Hawkins at length. I don't think there's a need to bring him up. He's an obvious player to watch with his first start of the year and all that good stuff. I'm actually going to go with Jay Knott here. James touched on him earlier. This is it. I will not talk about Jay Knott anymore if he does not get into the game and play and make an impact this weekend. Like this is kind of the last week where this is a thing for me. Like if Jay Knott cannot have a role against Kent State after the bye, then it's not going to happen. Like at least I'm not going to expect it to happen, right? So this is it for Jay Knott. It's been massively disappointing that he hasn't had a role so far. I mean, we all thought this guy was going to be awesome, and he hasn't played hardly at all. And when he has, it's not been anything special. So this, I mean, it's just for this weekend. We talk about they need to run the football, they need to find something there. If it's not now, then it's just not going to happen for Jay Knott. So definitely a very interested guy to watch this weekend is him, number 0. Can they get him going at all, or are we just, can we move on from this? Because I think if it doesn't happen now, we can move on.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. I think we kind of discussed it a few weeks back. It's like, give him a few more weeks. And if he doesn't, show you anything before Texas, like you're not going to throw him. You're not going to rely on him once you get into that, that 2-month stretch to end the season against that gauntlet of a schedule. So, I agree that Jaden Knott's certainly one of those guys to keep an eye on. But I'm going to go with one of the other obvious ones and go Giovanni Gibson. I mean, look, this is going to be the first time that we get to see him in action, because he got injured right before the Crimson Combine back in April. It's been 5+, almost 6 months since he broke his leg. And this is going to be his, first opportunity. He's been practicing for a few weeks now, getting back in a rhythm. It's been a, tedious recovery process for him. I mean, remember, he came out of that walking boot back in I want to say May, June. We saw him at the start of fall camp kind of jogging lightly, but, wasn't really doing much. But he's been back at practice the last few weeks. And remember, before that injury, he was probably their best wide receiver in practice. He's a guy that Emmett Jones said was at the top of his big board when they were, evaluating transfer wide receivers. And he's a guy that, he's bigger than a lot of the receivers that they've been playing out there. I mean, Keontae Lewis is about the same height, just about. But I think, Giovanni's a bigger bodied guy than Keontae is. So he's a guy that can, be a possession receiver over the middle, a guy that can take the top off the offense or off the defense rather. That's what he did well at Arkansas Pine Bluff last year. Was one of the best wide receivers in FCS at that, and All-American, obviously. And it's hard to make the comparison because he was going against FCS competition instead of FBS competition. But a lot of the advanced metrics, like he would have been a top 5, top 10 type guy at the FBS based on like his average depth of target, his downfield ability as a playmaker. So I'm excited to see what he can bring to the offense. Like I don't expect him to just like completely go off. It's going to be his first game back. We'll see how much he actually plays in this game, but I think they're going to make a concerted effort to get him a handful of targets and just make sure he's comfortable going into that SEC slate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there are 4 guys everybody's keen in on with Hawkins, Gibson, and Ott. I think this, as you guys just mentioned, I think the other one is Eli Bowen on the outside the corner, just coming back from his injury. I mean, we got to see what he can do last year, but you want to see if he can keep that up because, as you guys said, they're going into a critical part of the schedule. So if you can get him back and be full speed going into Texas and going into that schedule, it's going to be really beneficial for Oklahoma's defense. So just want to see what he can do getting back out there because he was a freshman All-American last year by ESPN. Yeah. So it was like it's a guy that's very talented and had an interception as well. So against Alabama and things like that. So want to see what he can do going into this one. So it's going to be pretty fun, I think, overall.
Yeah, no, for Gibson and Bowen both, it's just less so than even like any sort of statistical thing. Just like how do they look? How are they moving around the field? Because they really slow played it with Giovanni. I mean, he's been warming up. We talked about that on Monday. Like, can he kind of hit the ground running the way John Mateer speculated he would back in fall camp? Because I mean, again, fully expect that guy to be a big part of this if he's full go. And Eli Bowen, I mean, that's a guy that should be starting for you if he's a full go. So. Yeah, just how both guys just look. It's going to be a lot of eye tests for those two. I'm not really too worried about the numbers for either guy, but do they look like they're moving well and they look like themselves? That'll be a big thing to watch, no doubt, on Saturday for sure. Yeah,
I was going to say, like, if Eli looks like he looked last year, and, Brent Venables said last week, look, give him some grace because he hasn't played in a while.
Sure.
But, like, if there's anybody that can pick up where he left off, it's probably Eli. But getting him back at this juncture, and if he looks like he did last year, like, that changes the complexion of that cornerback room, which, again, we talked about it going into the season. It's like there was some uncertainty there because you're leaning on so much youth. But now we've seen what Cortland Guillory is capable of. We've seen Gentry Williams stay relatively healthy. They've gotten Kendall Dolby back. They're getting Eli Bowen back now. And they have all these other pieces that they can throw in there too between Jacoby Johnson and Davon Jordan. But you feel a lot better about that secondary, which has been stellar through the first 4 or 5 weeks of the season. When you have a guy like Eli Bowen, who was a freshman All-American and showed that he can, stand his ground against, some of the best receivers this country has to offer.
Mm-hmm. No doubt. Going to be fun to watch both guys, no doubt, on Saturday. All right, let's go ahead and pick it. Final score predictions for this one. Oklahoma, just a huge favorite. Let's see. At last check, I got 45.5, I think is what I saw. Yeah, 45.5. That's quite a number in favor of Oklahoma on this one. Colin Kennedy on the Thursday podcast, 49-3. He took the Sooners to cover the number just by a hair there. Time, you're starting it. What do you got? Final score prediction for Saturday, Oklahoma and Kent State.
52-0.
That's close.
Oklahoma should have 2 shutouts already.
Yeah,
against Illinois State and against Temple. I think that they're finally going to get this again. Like Kent State, with all due respect to them, like they've just not been a good program the last few years. Don't know how many times I can say it, but 25 straight losses at FBS competition.
Yeah,
they're just not a good team right now, and I think Oklahoma can go out there and name its score. I think the defense is really kind of yearning for that shutout after letting it slip through their hands in those 2 games against Illinois State and Temple. And again, those are because of turnovers that set up the teams with short fields. So if Oklahoma can avoid some of those mistakes with Michael Hawkins at the helm, I fully expect this defense to not let up a single point in this one.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, Tom. I think 56-0 is what I have. I think the defense is going to get their first shutout of the season, and I think offensively Oklahoma is going to try to get out to a very big lead to start because, as we've mentioned, they want to get some of those guys back in there, and I think it's better to do that when you already have a big lead and things like that. So maybe Jaden, somebody like that can get in the game. Eli Bowen and Javonte Gibson will get their reps there once they get that big lead and see where they're at. So I think 56-0, I think it's a pretty overmatched matchup for Kent State. I don't think they can handle it, especially with Oklahoma being at home. I think that plays a part into it. So I see it 56-0.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you guys. I mean, obviously, I think Oklahoma's going to win by a lot. You know, I look at Kent State's other two games similar to this when they played at Texas Tech and at Florida State, 62-14 against Tech, 66-10 against Florida State. So they have scored. I mean, they've moved the ball a little, but Oklahoma's defense obviously is better. It's one of the best in the country, maybe the best in the country. I'll say 55-3. I'll give Kent State the benefit of getting a field goal. A shutout is really hard. I mean, you've seen it twice where the defense is dominated, but one offensive mistake and they get a field goal out of it. So I'll give Kent State the benefit of getting into field goal range somehow, whether that's a shaky punt or a turnover or something. But they won't.
Mason Miller doesn't do shaky punts, Josh.
That's true. Well, Miller said he was really consistent in fall camp. We haven't seen that yet, so he's due. He's due for anything. And so, yeah, I mean, Oklahoma's going to dominate this game. It should not even be remotely close. But I will say 55-3 is where I'll land. Oklahoma will play well. Michael Hawkins will play well. They'll score some points and maybe actually run the ball on Saturday. And it'll be a nice and tidy day for Oklahoma and getting on to Texas and obviously in the SEC play from there. So 55.
You see the touchdown Kent State got against Texas Tech right there?
I did not.
It may have been Florida State, but it was like a little trickery type of play. The quarterback faked the run and threw it over the top to Deshaun Martin, who's their go-to guy on the outside.
I like it. Maybe a little trickeration. Maybe they get down the field on a little trickeration.
Gotta watch out for that here.
Yeah, usually that kind of stuff doesn't seem to work against Oklahoma this year so far. Like those end rounds and stuff haven't not worked, but we'll see. Maybe we'll see. Saturday afternoon, we're all going to be there. Full coverage, obviously, on the website, oklahoma.247sports.com. Much more to come throughout Friday and obviously all day on Saturday from the stadium YouTube channel. Full post-game reaction, Brent Venables, Ben Arbuckle, Michael Hawkins, and the rest of the team. And obviously from us, instant reaction. They'll be back with the podcast on Monday to wrap it all up. And, of course, look ahead to Texas next weekend in Dallas. That's it. We'll see you on Saturday afternoon from the stadium in Norman. For Tom Green, James D. Jackson, I'm Josh Callaway. We'll see you then Saturday, Oklahoma and Kent State, Saturday afternoon in Norman.